This time I want to invite our three plenary speakers from the conference to come and take a seat down here in the center under the gaze of all of the conference participants. You can fight it out amongst yourselves who's going to actually take the center of the three seats. Don't all leap at once.
As we say.
Well, what a great few days this has been. It really has been extraordinarily thought-provoking and stimulating. And all the discussions have extended my own understanding of GA, which, as Tom Bertneau mentioned, goes all the way back, I won't say to the beginning, but fairly close to the beginning. But as Andrew pointed out, one of the great things about GA is that it's never exhausted. You never feel like you've learned everything that is to be learned, so experiences like this are especially valuable for that. For this session, for this roundtable discussion, we don't have an agenda or any kind of a direction. We thought that we would just reserve this as an opportunity for the conference participants to ask questions, to respond, not only to the plenary speakers, but to anything that's come up in the course of this conference. So many things have come up. I can think of just a few that I can throw out there as possible starting points, but by all means, don't be limited by these. If you have something else, some other issue brought up during one of the coffee break conversations, let's continue that. But a few things have really stuck out to me in the course of the last couple of days. We've heard the word power over and over again: explanatory power, victimary power, aesthetic power, discursive power. And I'm intrigued by that concept of power and what it really means. Another idea that I found very fruitful and worthy of further consideration was something that came out in Eric's talk last night, and that's the idea of inscription. That actually provides a nice point of connection between the three plenary speakers, all in their own way are talking about the problem of, or the concept of, some sort of, I hesitate to use the word permanence, but some sort of material remnant or trace of the origin of representation. And then, of course, there's transcendence, and that term has come up several times, but that would be expected since that's kind of the conference, the loosely conceived conference theme. So at this time, I'll just stop talking and throw it open to any questions or any statements that maybe our panelists would like to make. Yeah, Sandy. Oh, and please come up to the microphone. So this is being taped, and so that we get all the sound nice and loud, please come up and speak into the mic.
Thank all of you for your presentations, and I think this has been, for me, a great experience and a great learning time. I have a question for Eric, which derives from his talk yesterday. Could you say a little bit more about hierarchy and the place of the originary scene in hierarchy? You said this is a kind of an update. I guess what I'm thinking about is how has GA changed from the beginning, and how is this now a better place for putting the original scene, the originary hypothesis? You said that hierarchy is the foundation of hierarchy is a better, unless I misunderstood what you're saying, which I may have very well have.
I think you may be inverting what I said. I just said that we haven't paid quite enough attention. I'm not sure. Is this working? Oh, she's the one in the middle. Is this on?
Yeah.
Well, then although in the End of Culture, which came out in 1985, I talked about the origins of hierarchy, and I presented the big man thesis, which I simply really repeated. The emphasis of the stuff that I've written about has tended not to dwell on the question of hierarchy. And I think that in fact, Richard reminded me of that I had said some things that I had already sort of forgotten, like that Girard's scapegoat mechanism is really an explanation of hierarchy rather than an originary scene as such, because it makes this emphasis on the human center as having usurped the place of the divinity. And in other words, it's about human sacrifice. Well, human sacrifice is not the sort of thing that really takes place in these elementary societies. But in any case, I was basically saying that we should go back and theorize it a little more. And I think that this is the way GA works. You have an originary scene, but you can keep modifying it and elaborating on it. In other words, Adam Katz's emendation, if you like, some people call it the First Amendment, that he, he suggested that we should look at the originary event in terms of firstness, that you shouldn't, when I said that everybody's gesture is arrested. I know Andy always tells me I should say act. And I think you're right, but I mean, by this time, it doesn't pay to change the word. I mean, Andy had said this from the beginning. I should have said the aborted act of appropriation, but gesture has a bit of rhythm to it. You know? In any case, this aborted gesture, which I had presented as simply everybody stopping at the same time, sort of thinking about a bunch of people thinking of taking the last cookie or something. But obviously, it's more minimal, and that's always what you try to do in GA. You're trying to create the minimal anthropology. So the minimal way of describing it involves firstness, whereas one person would first understand that it wasn't just instinctively recoiling, but that there was actually an attempt to show others that he was pointing to the object as something he wasn't taking, so to speak. And so that there would be, everyone wouldn't act symmetrically. You can't assume that people are all going to act symmetrically. That's an assumption that's greater than assuming that someone would do it first, but this would be contagious. I mean, that firstness would lead to a mimesis because everyone would be happy with that, considering that what they want to do is show I'm not taking it because I don't want you to, attack me as somebody who's trying to usurp the center. So in the model that Adam suggests, you would have this model of firstness. But here, firstness resolves itself in symmetry. But if you get to the big man level, where you have a surplus, in other words, you have materials that stay outside of the of any given distribution, so that you don't distribute it all at once, and you have stuff that's left over, well, then you can start talking about usurping the center in a productive way, so that you can not just be first in the sense of being the first to point to something, but that you supply the materials for the feast, and then, then the next guy, when it's his turn, well, you supply the materials again, and at a certain point, you become the sort of leader. And what interested me, it's still a fascinating idea, that Salins is talking about this at a rather early point, when this big man actually has less stuff for himself than the other people, because he hasn't yet reached the point where he can exploit them all, get all their stuff, and then redistribute it and keep a lot for himself. So I thought that was the point I was making, so that if you put a little more accent on, well, let me say, if you give more weight to the ethical problem that involves, the fact that we are all created equal and we all resent any difference. And this is just as true of a slave in the days of the Pharaoh as for us today. I mean, even if people accept their lot in life because you can't do much about it, just as the people in North Korea accept to live in this sort of concentration camp that the whole country is, that doesn't mean that they don't feel resentment. It just means that they give up, well, what's the point? What are you going to do if the Pharaoh has an army, and if you try to challenge him, you'll just be killed. So if that's the case, then we need to put a little more weight on the whole paradox that this implies, that on the one hand, we're all created equal, we all can exchange words and signs equally and reciprocally, but at the same time, you have the fact that society henceforth will never really be equalitarian in the sense of some sort of socialist paradise. So that tension is very central, and it's central to our way of dealing with these questions. And one of the things that I would have elaborated a little more on the aesthetic, well, I talked about tragedy as the kind of sort of the highest